Water is life, and access to water is critical for the health and well-being, economic prosperity, and enjoyment of life for everyone. Yet today, 2.2 billion people still lack access to safe water. That's 1/4 of the population.
Your documentary, Water Together, captures vital insight into the connection between technology and the factors that determine success or failure of drinking water projects. It's a message that deeply resonates with our work here at Eight Glasses, and it answers some of the questions we've received about our work so far.
Yeah, Karl, thank you so much for your willingness to hop on this call with us and answer some of our questions about your experiences. We're really grateful for that, and we'd love to ask you some questions about yourself. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to make Water Together?
Yeah, so thanks for having me here today. So my name is Karl Zimmermann. I'm a water researcher, now water engineer, water treatment engineer. I did my grad school at the University of British Columbia here in Vancouver, and I'm now a water treatment engineer with WSP Canada. But anyways, I think what's more interesting story for this discussion is my PhD work. And so, yeah, the documentary emerged kind of from the latter half of the research I did there. And so what I was I started my grad school research in science lab, like kind of typical engineering, looking at a drinking water filter, biological ion exchange. I can put you to sleep sometime explaining how that works. It's super cool technology. I like it. But then I started seeing that also important was to consider the social context, the community context of drinking water as you're trying to create a sustainable drinking water solution. So you need a technology, but it needs to be the right technology and implemented in the right way. And that second key piece, implementing in the right way, that's what I saw a lot of, at least, especially in engineering. But then as I grew beyond engineering, I saw that a lot of that was not well understood. People know that technologies need to be applied in the right way, but it was kind of poorly understood how that happened. And there's also some progress or some thoughts in the international development sector about water partnerships right now. And the 2023 Water Development Report was called Partnerships and Cooperation for Water. And so there's some ideas around cooperation and partnerships, but kind of, again, is loosely understood. So for the second half of my PhD, that's kind of the task I took on. I switched from being a science engineer to a social scientist. And I got to travel around the world and meet and learn from all these really inspiring NGOs. So I think I visited 9 organizations on 5 continents, which was an incredible privilege to be able to do. And so, anyways, there's a lot of learnings that came out of that around what leads to what does a water partnership look like, and how do we involve everybody in decision making for water management. That involves the community especially, but it also involves, there's a role for teachers in the school and nurses at the health center and local government and national government and international people. All these people need to come together in a water partnership. Anyway, so that was some of the lessons that I kind of was learning from these organizations I was visiting. And then along the way, I was realizing that the typical output and what my work was leading towards was English language written journal articles. That's what academia produces. And I was kind of seeing that the stories I was hearing deserve to be shared to a wider audience. People who might not read English and might not be able to get over a paywall to Google Scholar. So then that's where I kind of hatched the idea of, can we share water stories with pictures and videos? And that's so the picture side, I was able to publish some photo stories along the way. But where the videos led to is this documentary. And that was something that I kind of had an inkling at the beginning of this journey that I thought I might want to make a documentary, but I don't know how to make a documentary. So kind of along the way, I was asking people if I could record some of the interviews we were having. All of my Google Pixel phone, the whole thing was shot there. And I'm trying to collect stories so that I could share people's water stories in their own languages and voices. And then that's kind of, after I came back after the 2 years of traveling around the world, thought about what the story and the message that I had learned was, and that I thought I wanted to share with the wider world. And then I worked with a video production company to kind of string all these clips together to make a coherent story. And that became the documentary Water Together.
Well, I hope Google Pixel sponsored you for...
Yeah, it's I'm a strong advocate of Google Pixels. Pixel 3 shot a whole documentary. It was pretty incredible. Yeah.
From your experience, what do you think is the most critical component of successful water management? Is it something along the lines of awareness, leadership, technology, or some other concept?
Yeah, all the above, but the critical piece there. So you're talking about, yeah, awareness of water challenges, education of what are the options, whether it's a technology or a behavior change or a policy. But the critical piece is who's making those decisions. If it's a white guy from Canada like me making decisions on how programs should be implemented in rural Nepal or in sub-Saharan Africa or somewhere, right? I'm going to miss a lot of that context, and I'll design a solution that works. That's I have textbooks and I experiences that I can learn from, but it's going to miss the whole culture and history of that community, and it's so specific. You can't generalize to a region. Each community has their history, their values. Who deserves, if we have enough money to put 10 new extensions on the water pipeline, who deserves water? That's a different question than how can I maximize the number of connections we get with X dollars, right? So the critical piece is involving the right people in decision making, and there's a difference between engineering decisions and values-based decisions, and it's those values-based decisions that you need the local people. We'll call them water users or community members. They're the ones who need to be involved in that decision-making process, and that's what this documentary talks about. Is before people, when I was chatting with these community members and local level stakeholders, before people were confident to make decisions about, who gets the next connection, do we charge everybody the same thing, or do richer people get charged more per liter of water, kind of thing? Before people were ready to make those decisions, there was a bit that they wanted to know about water management. Just like, before you can build a house, you need to know a few things about how construction works. And that's what the documentary talks about, is 3 steps: awareness, awareness, education, and resources, to empower people to be ready to make those decisions. So that was a long answer to your question, but the most important thing is involving the right people in making the right decisions.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So a central theme of your work is that community, it's essential to driving meaningful change. What strategies or recommendations would you have for anyone else who's interested on effectively starting these conversations and fostering collaboration in this context?
Yeah, great question. And you frame that in the proper way, which is, how do you foster a collaboration? And that's really what I think we're moving away from a model of importing solutions to a model of creating partnerships. So well before you start thinking about, oh, I have this fancy ceramic filter, or I'm going to do reverse osmosis, before you start thinking about what the technology is, think about who needs to be involved, what are their roles, and then what tools are needed to make sure everybody is able to participate. And then once we have a team assembled of the right people to make those technical decisions, but also the health-based decisions, education-based decisions, and those values-based decisions, the community members and the water users need to make those values-based decisions. Once we have the right team together for that, then we can start thinking about, well, what's the local context, what has worked in the past, what hasn't, what are 3 options, put it to kind of a vote or an assessment, and then we can work towards a technology. But it's really assembling that team at the front end. Yeah, and that's what you hit on right in the question of, how do you foster that collaboration?
Yeah, so I mean, this topic really resonated with us and stood out the most to me personally. And so I guess just to kind of expand on this question a bit further, scaling projects, coming into different communities, sometimes it might not align with the community and their values. We talked about this a little bit, but do you have any instances or examples that you'd like to share where there was a positive outcome at the end, or you learned about the community? Maybe some suggestions you can give us in our project with 8 glasses?
Yeah. So your question is around how to align values. Is that
how to align values?
Yeah.
Maybe some examples if you have any.
Yeah, well, again, and so by asking those questions, that means you've thought about it, right? A lot of times I see NGOs that come in and I all the time, no, I used to have very often people come in to be saying, oh, you have to meet my friend. They invented the best filter. It's going to solve Africa's problems, right? And that's kind of a funny statement on many levels. But if you're coming in with a solution, you've missed the point. Because if you're imposing or importing a specific solution, if you're only offering one thing, then you're probably, the chances that you're going to mesh that one solution with the exact values and the needs of that community is low. You could do an assessment of a whole bunch of different communities and find which one best fits. But by asking, like you said, what are the values and how can we mesh that? And then how do we go and find the right solution that meets those needs and capacities? That's the right way of going about it. And the best way to learn those values is to ask, right? Have a meeting, sit down, have a coffee at sunrise or sunset, and whatever it is, and say, what's the priority here? Do you guys prefer groundwater or surface water? A lot of the work I do with First Nations communities here in Western Canada, you can have groundwater like from a well, or you can have surface water from a river. Different communities might have different trusts of, maybe I don't know, there was some chemical spill in a river a generation ago, and there's a distrust of surface water, right? So that's kind of a preference-based solution. How much water do people want every day? Do you use water for agriculture, or are you going to use this just for drinking water, right? These are all decisions that I could, as an engineer, I can make, but they're really community value decisions. And so, sitting down, having a discussion with the community to kind of understand what are their interests in their water system. And then once you've identified their interests, do a check if that matches with all the other partners. NGOs come with specific funding, and governments have specific mandates, and see if those match together. And if they do, then great, you're off on a good foot, and you can look at signing a memorandum of understanding to define everyone's roles and responsibilities. And as long as those match up, then okay, so we have a certain set of skills and expertise. Maybe we have a suite of a few different technologies or policies or behavior changes that we can apply. I mean, no one's an expert in absolutely everything, right? So as long as those kind of values align with what the local needs are, then you're, I think, on a good footing. But that process, that's not a quick process. To start discussions about values, you need trust. And trust is, what's the saying? It's slow to get and fast to lose, or something. There's different strategies about how that I learned about how to build trust. Foremost of which, I think, is being introduced by a community member. So, if you're a foreigner like I was, if you meet up with the village chief or the water management committee, or if you have some contact already in there who you have a bit of a repertoire with, having them introduce you to a community at a community meeting or water committee meeting or whatever it is, that starts build trust. It introduces, you're relying on that, or that person is, sharing their trust in the community, a reputation with you. And so that's a good way of being kind of introduced. And but listening a lot, and that's a lot of what I did, and a lot of what I heard was needed, is just go and you listen. Just sit around, have a coffee, and ask people, what's worked in the past? What do you want from your water system? What do you trust about your water? What don't you trust? And you just listen. And then you come back weeks, months later and say the follow up, hey, how's it going? Anything changed with your water? Do you have any ideas on what the next water system might, look like? And just listening, doing a lot of listening, that's what I found works to build trust. And then once you're kind of aligned on the same page, you can start talking about values. And then if that meshes, then you go to roles and responsibilities for a project. But all that can take months or years before you even start talking about what the technology could look like.
Thank you so much, Karl. Coming across this documentary, it was a big presentation, but I did find that this is really what's missing between a lot of what ideas are and what's actually happening, like the lack of community involvement or, training, getting them to understand the health conditions. So thank you so much for making this documentary, for sharing it with everybody, and then for coming and answering our questions as well.